Pasadena Area Community College District, regular business meeting, August 16th, 2017, will come to order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Selvage?
Here.
Dr. Fellow?
Here.
Mr. Osterling?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Hilsman? Mr. Martin? Ms. Waugh? Ms.
Here.
Ekshian?
Trustee Osterling, are there any public comment cards for matters on the closed agenda?
Not that I know of.
Okay. We will adjourn to closed session at this time for Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Appointment, Coordinator Upward Bound, Government Code Section 54957, Employee Discipline Dismissal Release 1 Employee, Government Code Section 54957, Employee Discipline Dismissal Release, a probationary release 1 employee, Title 5, Section 53021A, upgrading of incumbents 2, and Government Code 54957.6, Conference with Labor Negotiators, Agency Designated Representative Dr. Lisa Norman, Human Resources Employee Organization, Pasadena City College Police Officers Association. The Pasadena Area Community College District, regular business meeting, August 16th, 2017, will come to order. The board has met in closed session, and we have 2 reportable actions. In closed session, the board unanimously, by a vote of 6-0 with 1 trustee absent, took action to terminate the employment agreement of an executive director pursuant to section 1.6 of the agreement. The Board of Trustees also, in closed session, unanimously by a vote of 6-0 with 1 trustee absent, took action to release 1 probationary employee pursuant to Education Code section 88013. We have a roll call, please.
Dr. Selvage?
Here.
Dr. Fellow?
Here.
Mr. Osterling?
Here.
Ms. Brown? Here. Mr. Hilsman? Mr. Martin?
Here.
Ms. Waugh?
Here.
Ms. Ekshian?
Here.
See, Trustee Brown, you
Yes,
lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
certainly. Please stand and place your hands over your heart and repeat after me. I spread allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Verdian, you are recommending that we reorder 1 item in the agenda?
I am asking that we move item I, first item I, the presentation by the Foundation Board, to immediately after the consent items.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously with the advisory vote voting aye. Introductions and recognitions. Dr. Verdian?
We do have with us today several members of the Board of Directors of the Pasadena City College Foundation. We have Dr. Jack Scott, Mr. Jim Sarney. We have the Executive Director, Ms. Bobby Abraham. We have Ms. Nancy Smith, who works for the foundation, and we have Mr. Penn Armistead, who is the special consultant for the foundation during the major gift campaign. And we will be honored to listen to their presentation immediately after the approval of consent items. Welcome to the...
Yes, welcome, in particular to Dr. Scott, who happens to be a constituent of mine. Public comment on non-agenda items. Trustee Osterling, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items?
We have 1 public comment. Mr. Martin Enriquez. You'll have 3 minutes, sir, and I'll give you the usual 30-second warning.
Thank you. Honorable trustees and assembled persons, on June 30th, I witnessed a wonderful vision, the commencement of a fantastic new program to recognize the pride and joy of salt-of-the-earth parents who watched their beautiful daughters and their handsome sons take their first steps up the academic ladder. I saw proud fathers, happy moms, and joyful loved ones who were delighted to see their relatives and friends attain their associate's degree or certificate of completion as they stepped forward to their vocation of choice or to continue further their education. The warmth expressed to this person is appreciated. Special thanks to Trustee Jim Osterling and Linda Waugh for their participation, and to the many good offices of Students Services and other offices that cooperated that made a dream come true. Kudos, kudos, kudos. Additional thanks to the Superintendent President Verdian for riding the helm these last 2 years. 1, for reforming the academic departments. 2, bringing labor peace. 3, improving faculty administration relations. 4, reestablishing accreditation. 5, the chimes. I love the chimes. And 6, for benches in the hallways so students won't have to sit on the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Enriquez, and I believe you were also in that ceremony as well. Congratulations to you, sir.
Are those all the comments?
That's it. No further public comments.
Thank you. Approval of minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in
Second.
favor? Passes 6-0 with 1 absent. The advisory vote, aye. Okay, consent items, D, students. Are there any items here that trustees would like discussed separately?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
We did.
Yes, we did.
Yes. Passes 6-0, 1 absent. Advisory vote, aye. E, consent items, instruction. Are there any items that any trustee would like discussed separately?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Passes 6-0 with 1 absent, and the advisory vote, aye. Consent items, business. Are there any items that any trustees would like discussed separately?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Trustee Martin.
I'm trying to get caught up with my numbers. The architect for the new U building, is that not one of the Bs?
It is, John.
I'm not-
F13.
Yes.
F13, I would like to have at least, I don't need a separate motion necessarily, but I'd like to have some discussion on F13 and F10, the Fab Lab.
I think the appropriate thing is to
The appropriate thing is to have that pulled out.
I'll leave that to the chair, but
Okay.
I'm,
Right, so are there any other requests to remove items from the consent calendar for separate discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of consent items F, except F10 and F13? This passes 6-0 with 1 absent, and the advisory vote, student trustee, is aye. Now, do we move that then down to action items? Okay, right, okay. Consent items, personnel.
We have a slight change in that, in this item. Under classified personnel, if you go down, Police Officer Ruben Ortiz, the step and column should be 53A. we had the wrong information there, but it should be 53A instead of 43A.
I'm sorry, B, 53B?
Yes, 53B?
B.
B, 53B.
Yes, thank
Right.
you.
That's a typo correction?
Right.
Okay. Any further requests?
Move to approve with amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
We're talking about the personnel items, right?
Personnel,
Correct.
right.
Okay, so obviously I'm going to want to vote for this, but there's a certain retirement in the personnels that I think we'd all want to comment on. Didn't know if you wanted that before the vote.
Yes.
Obviously,
any-
G2 has the,
But, okay, we are in discussion.
okay.
And, Trustee Martin.
Well, G2 is unfortunately, unfortunately for us, the retirement of Dr. Verdian, who we started this meeting with our guest speaker, highlighting so many positive things, of which he just touched the tip of the iceberg. And so I can't let this go without saying, I don't think I can push a green button on this one. I don't know if that's going to help. But it's just been phenomenal what you've accomplished. And I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more pomp and circumstance around this retirement coming. But I just can't push that button without at least saying thank you for what you've done these last few years. It's been sensational.
Trustee Osterling.
I'd like to echo what Trustee Martin said, but also thank Dr. Verdian. You came here at a very, very important time for the institution, and in the short time that you've been here already, you've accomplished many, many important things, including getting us off of probation, becoming one of the top 10 community colleges in the country, and many other accomplishments. But also, I'd like to thank you for your way that you're going about your retirement and finishing out your contract through the end of the next fiscal year, and allowing us time to make an orderly transition. So thank you for what you have done and what you will do to help this institution. Thank you.
Any other comments? All in favor?
John.
Sorry,
You can push the red button, John.
I don't think I'm going to just stick with the red button. I'm not in favor.
Consent item G passes 5 in favor, 1
One,
opposed, and 1 absent. This is a personnel matter, so we do not have a vote from the student trustee.
One adamantly opposed.
Okay, now, we would like at this time to... Yes, we'll go to the information item.
then circle back, that's fine.
Yes, then come back to the action. So this, the information item
Right.
that is actually listed as I-1.
Ms. Bobby Abram will be talking to us about the Foundation Major Gift Campaign that has started already.
Yes, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to make this presentation. Dr. Jack Scott and Mr. Jim Sarney are here tonight. They've been previously introduced, and they may have some comments they'd like to make as well. I'm going to go through a very brief chronology of this, and Mary Thompson is passing out some printed materials that have been prepared and will be the materials that we'll be using throughout the campaign. These just came to us yesterday, so you're one of the first people to see them. This campaign idea actually started in about 2012 when the PCC Foundation Board of Directors had a strategic plan, and in 2013 approved that plan to become a fundraising organization and launch a fundraising program. In 2014, under interim PCC President Bob Miller, we actually did a feasibility study at that time, And we tested in the community the ideas of health sciences, workforce development, our technology consortium, and scholarships. And we got information back that showed that PCC would be very successful in a major gifts campaign. In 2015, we had a change in leadership at the college, and Dr. Verdian stepped up to the plate, and almost immediately, we reviewed those priorities according to his agenda for the college, and they changed slightly. One of the things I wanted to mention is that during the time of the gala, when many of you were there, we had already done our original feasibility study. And when you are counting in a campaign the proceeds that come in, you begin counting at the time you do your feasibility study. So keep in mind that throughout this process, that anything that was raised through the gala, even from that 2014 date, is being counted in this campaign. After Dr. Verdian came and made his 4 initiatives, part of his inaugural address in October of 2015, the PCC Foundation created a 5-year budget so that we could identify if we were going to go into a major gifts campaign, how much was it going to cost us, and what were the steps involved in that. John Gregory was president at the time, and according to his tenure, we divided the foundation into groups and identified white papers and drilled down very succinctly into what projects and even pieces of equipment were needed at the college and how the foundation could support those needs. Then in December of 2015, we took those white papers and the idea officially to the foundation board, and it was approved that we would enter into a major gifts campaign. In the spring of 2006, we began doing interviews for consultants for the campaign, and Armistead Group was the one chosen. Pind Armistead was also introduced earlier, and he is here tonight also in case you have questions. And then in the summer of 2016, June, Jim Sarney then became president of the foundation, and we began to identify then, we knew we had a budget, but we needed to identify where the funding was actually going to come from. And we put together a proposal at that time and brought it to the Board of Trustees, and you approved at that time a year ago that we were going to move some funding from a restricted fund to an unrestricted fund to help pay for the campaign. Then we needed a general chairman, and in the winter of 2016, Dr. Jack Scott agreed to be general campaign chair. And then, of course, in spring 2017, we came to you and asked about the budget again. That's when we also hired Elder Tree to become our campaign marketing group that helped us put these materials together. And then now we have a budget for 2017. Thank you very much. That happened at the last meeting. And then the campaign materials arrived just yesterday. So that brings us up to date on very quickly sort of how long it takes and what this took to get us to this point. One of the biggest questions about the campaign is, what is your goal going to be? Well, our feasibility study showed that we had the ability to raise between $10 and $20 million. According to the recommendation of not only the board but our consultant, typically you don't announce a goal for a campaign until you have made some of your very strategic, high-level major gift asks in the campaign. And that typically will set the pace and a strategic direction. We have those asks scheduled for this fall. So until that happens, we probably won't come out publicly with any kind of goal. But we feel very comfortable that setting a goal between $10 and $12 million is very doable for us. So I would anticipate that the number will be somewhere around there. And to give you an update of where we are, we're actually at a little over $6 million right now in cash pledges and planned gifts. And of that, most of that money is in cash, and most of it is at the foundation already. We have probably $400,000 in pledges, and I'm sorry, probably $200,000 in pledges and probably $200,000 in planned gifts. And I would like to just see if Jim Sarney would like to make some comments.
Good evening, members of the Board of Trustees and Dr. Verdian and administration. I promised Bobby that I would limit my remarks to 1 hour. So honestly, I am here merely to say that, to represent the foundation and to say that we are 150% behind this effort. I've been personally involved in, this is my 4th capital campaign, so I know what we're in for, and we are all delighted to be part of this. And it's my personal opinion, there's probably never a more critical time in, certainly in the college's history, in the city's history, and in the nation's in the nation to embark on a successful campaign like this. And while there are no guarantees in life, as we all know, there is one thing that I'm very sure of, and that is the success of this campaign. And one of those reasons is because of the man that has agreed to chair the Capitol campaign. And it's a man that needs no introduction, and it's Dr. Jack Scott. And I assured him when I asked him on that fateful afternoon at my office if he would consider chairing the campaign, I assured him that he would not be in this alone, and he's not going to be in it alone, but it's under his leadership that it will be a success. So, Dr. Scott, would you like to come up? Thank you for your time.
Well, as all of you know, standing before the Pasadena City College trustees is not unfamiliar to me. I was privileged to serve as president here from 1987 to 1995, and those were delightful years in my life. I look back on it with a lot of pride and a lot of enjoyment, and I even see one familiar face on the Board of Trustees. John Martin was here when I came, and he continued and did a superb job then, and I'm sure he's doing a superb job now. And I was privileged to work with a very effective Board of Trustees who were extremely supportive and were certainly good in giving direction as far as policy of the college was concerned. As you know, after I served here, I went to the legislature for 12 years. And then, as somebody said on there, I failed retirement twice. I then became the chancellor of California Community Colleges. And of course, it deepened my already commitment to community colleges. And what a great, great institution California Community Colleges are, and of course, particularly Pasadena City College. When I think about the transformation of lives, when I think about how that they come here, many of them, in fact, most of them are first generation, first in their family to go to college. And suddenly they are given the opportunity either to get a transfer degree and move on to a senior institution or prepare themselves in career and technical programs. It's just a great, great work that they do. And I compliment this Board of Trustees for the fact that you are voluntarily giving your service. That you care enough about the education of, I started to say youth, but so many of those who attend Pasadena City College are adults. They come back here because they know that this is a place they can receive additional education. When I was president here, I was impressed with the foundation. We strengthened the foundation, and the foundation was successful in enriching the life of the college. During my tenure, we raised about $10 million. We were able to improve the things in the library that the state didn't finance. We were able to do the same thing over in the athletic area. We were actually able to get the gift of the Child Development Center. And so I look back on those years, and so when I was asked to join the foundation after my retirement, I was very willing to do so. And then they surprised me by saying, we want you to head up this campaign. Well, as college president and as someone who sought public office, I at least had a little experience of asking people for money. So I'll continue that. I've already been involved in talking particularly to members of the foundation board, because that's the first step we're taking, is to make sure that we have 100% participation by our foundation board. And incidentally, I will simply say it'd be nice to see 100% participation by this Board of Trustees. So that would be something that would be helpful to the campaign. Well, what is this campaign about? Well, it's about scholarships, for one thing. You took the very bold step of the promise. You said, in effect, that any student in this district who graduates from high school and comes to Pasadena City College, if they don't get their tuition paid for through other means, that you'll pay for their tuition. Tuition-free education for every high school graduate in this area. And the foundation is the one that is going to provide the funds for that. So scholarships, that's part of our campaign. Career and technical education. I always think of that as one of the most important things community colleges do. When you think about all of those middle skill jobs, as they're often referred to, which don't require a four-year degree or a graduate degree, but does require something beyond a high school diploma. We're talking about those that become nurses, those that become auto technicians, individuals that seek to be a dental hygienist or a firefighter, and I could go on. And very frequently, those areas need equipment, and you know enough about community college finance to know that those individuals we only get the same amount of money whether one majors in psychology or majors in nursing. But I can tell you, as someone who knows the college budget, it's far more expensive to educate someone in nursing than it is someone in psychology. So we need equipment, and this is one of the things that we will do. And then we looked at the areas of both art, and after all, this is a center of entertainment and art in the whole nation, and athletics. For instance, our football field has to have some redoing, and the state of California doesn't take care of football fields. And so we're going to raise this money, not needlessly. It's going to be used to really educate the students of Pasadena City College. It's a major gifts campaign. Many times you're involved in maybe raising money for a building, and perhaps in the future you may want to seek a bond for some capital expansion here on the campus. But we need equipment, we need scholarships, and so I am so pleased that the Board of Trustees has been enthusiastically supporting this campaign, and we ask for your continued support. And we're also here, by the way, to answer any questions you might have. If I don't have the answers, I'm sure that I can call on some people here to answer any questions. But that'll tell you a little bit about the campaign of the PCC Foundation.
Trustee Brown.
Well, this is not a question. This is just a comment of how happy we are. I know I'm in particular very happy to see that you will come out of retirement to really come and help Pasadena City College. It shows the love that you have for this community, and we really appreciate it, and definitely will work to support in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate that compliment, but you know, I just believe very strongly in Pasadena City College and what it does. And I've been privileged. I was privileged, of course, to get a college education and some graduate education as well. But I'm just thrilled when I was here as president, I'd walk out on that campus and see those students. So thank you for supporting the campaign.
Trustee Waugh.
Yeah, so these aren't really questions, but I do want to thank the foundation and the director and her staff and administrators that have really made this so successful. And in just the 6 years I've been on this board, I've just seen tremendous growth, and I think that you've done an outstanding job. And then this is just kind of a same old refrain that I'm sure Bobby might know is coming, but I know we talk about raising funds for scholarships, and as you know, I've been a big proponent of also using money to help fund internships, not just scholarships. And especially, I think, with the state initiative on CTE and really having work experience and applied learning through work, I think it's really important. And I think it's a really good opportunity for the foundation to partner and to make sure that that is one of the success components too that you look at.
And that came out quite strongly in our feasibility study. And so that is part of the CTE part of this campaign.
Thank you.
Trustee Fellow.
Yes, thank you. Again, I want to echo what my colleague Belinda Brown said about you, Jack Scott, and I've always had great respect for you. You don't know that one time I had a whispering campaign to run you for governor, so I think you would have made an outstanding governor. But I wanted to ask the question, I could have asked my wife, I guess, because she's very active in the foundation. Is this going to be just an asking campaign, or are you planning another major event, which was the best event I ever attended in the San Gabriel Valley?
It depends on how much money we raise, I think. I thought that gala was the highlight of my career. I just absolutely loved the planning, and Nancy Davis was very instrumental in all of that, and she continues to help us. In the back of my mind, when PCC becomes 95 years old, that might be the timing where this campaign would conclude, and we might have a conclusion event. I would really love to save my energy for the 100th anniversary of this college. And I know I'm on record and it's public and all that, but I would love to finish this campaign, celebrate it, close it down, and then start a campaign like you've never seen to coincide with the 100th centennial anniversary of PCC. So a lot of this campaign is helping us get our processes in place, our staffing in place. One of the reasons why Pend Armisted's group was chosen was because he mentors our staff and he helps grow the staff and train us to handle what comes through a campaign. We had some other opportunities with other consultants that cost quite a bit more money, but the foundation board decided we would grow our own because we're looking really for that 100th year.
Well, Dr. Fellows, I appreciate your whispering campaign, and I can't help but tell you a little story from my campaign days. I was speaking one time, and I was rather forthright and candid, and a woman came up afterwards, and she said, "Oh, you were so candid in your remarks. You ought to run for governor." And I said, maybe one of the reasons I was candid in my remarks is I'm not running for governor.
True. Trustee Osterling.
Thank you. I just wanted to reinforce the comments of Dr. Scott and Trustee Waugh, that the importance of assisting with the funding of our CTE, career technical education. As Dr. Scott pointed out, those courses tend to cost more per credit hour because of equipment and other needs. And the white paper that the Chancellor's office issued stated that 47% of all the jobs here in the state of California are what Dr. Scott referred to as mid-skill jobs. And we're perfectly positioned ourselves in all the community colleges to provide the education for those mid-skill jobs, and the funding from the state is short for that. So I would just reinforce that be an important part of the campaign, and I think that will resonate well with our donor base. Thank you.
I absolutely agree with you. And, you know, one of the things we'll do in this campaign is give people the opportunity to contribute to the particular part of that campaign that they're most interested in. And we're already finding that a lot of people, whether we're going out to the automobile industry, the corporate world, understands, for instance, the value of career technical education. So we're going to make that certainly very central in this campaign.
Thank you.
Trustee Martin, were you?
Just a quick comment. As I was getting ready for the meeting tonight, someone said I have bad news about the agenda and I have good news about the agenda. Said Dr. Verdian is going into retirement, and the good news is Jack Scott's coming out. So now I'm getting it. Thank you.
Well, I will tell you, this isn't a full-time job.
Just,
Well, is it still appropriate to address you as Senator Scott? Wow.
You can call me that, but you can just call me Jack's fine.
We have a special relationship. Right, I want to express my gratitude for all you've been doing over the years. I've been around here for a long, long time, and you made quite a name for yourself with all your contributions back in the latter 80s to the mid-90s, and then as a legislature. I know when you were my assemblyman and then senator and all that, and so thanks an awful lot. And I really appreciate the emphasis on the educational aspect. Yes, Dr. Verdian.
The college would like to thank the foundation for the hard work that you've all been doing. And we will be bringing to the board for the next meeting a resolution for the board to support the major gift campaign that the foundation is launching to support our students at Pasadena City College. So we will have a resolution for the board to sign at the next board meeting to support that.
Well, that'll be
effort.
very important as we go forth to be able to say that the Board of Trustees of Pasadena City College are solidly behind this campaign.
That's what we expect to put in that resolution. We want to make that happen in a reality, and we thank you again.
Let's see, the information item, no, excuse me, the action, okay. So,
Back to John's.
okay, the first item that was on the consent calendar that it was requested that we discuss separately is item F10, authorization to bid number 996, Fab Lab renovation.
and I had
Trustee Martin, you.
I just wanted a little better understanding of what the Fab Lab is. I asked, and Dr. Verdian did give me some
Okay,
information.
excuse me.
We need a
Trustee
mo-
Martin,
we need a motion
first.
Oh, sorry.
We do have a motion. Well,
No,
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 we
this
don't.
is- you vote.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Trustee Martin.
Okay, so, and it's almost like the more he explained to me, the more interested I got and realized I don't really get it. So, could someone just give me it sounds like it's a little more robust than a hackathon. Sounds like there's some equipment and so I just would like to better understand Fab Lab.
I'm going to ask Vice President Dr. Giugni to address that.
Sure. So the Fab Lab, so our Fab Lab, and Fab basically stands for fabrication, and it is a maker space, and so you've probably heard that term, and in fact we talked about that at an earlier board meeting. And maker spaces can support a number of different areas. Our Fab Lab is mostly in support of things in digital technology, machine tool, and things of that nature. There is considerable amount of equipment in there, the 3D printers, laser cutters, computers obviously that run those, as well as have software on them so that students can actually develop things on the computer and test them before they actually make prototypes in the lab. And so it supports many of our classes in the engineering and tech program. We're actually in the process of expanding the programs that use it, so we're reaching out to the areas of art and STEM to allow students in those areas to actually use it. And so it's used both for classes that they're not scheduled in there, but their students go there to work on projects. They might do some of that during class time, but they'll do that after hours as well. And then it's also used for to allow students, and the idea of a makerspace really, which we're not to yet, but makerspaces throughout the state, the idea is have them open 24 hours a day to allow the community to come in and do various work that might support. We're not there yet, not sure we'll get there, that it will be open to the community. At this point, it's just open to students of Pasadena City College. And so the hours are I think I provide, they're 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so what the proposal is on your agenda, basically, is for us to go out for a bid to, I'll say, renovate the space, but the renovation is actually fairly minimal. It's really to upgrade the equipment that's in there. That room, and I invite you to tour it, is basically, there are 3 spaces in that room right now. There's the Fab Lab, which is what you walk into. There's a small computer lab between the Fab Lab and then the machine tool space in the back. What the renovation is going to do is pull more power into that room so that we can upgrade the equipment and add more equipment. The machine tool area will, if you see that, you'll see that that's fairly outdated machine tool equipment, and so that's going to be updated with more current machine tool type equipment. The computers will be moved to allow more space to expand both the machine tool area and the Fab Lab area. And then, as I mentioned, we're in the process of expanding the programs that will utilize that space, because at this point it supports mostly just the engineering tech program, but we'd like to be able to expand it to others. So I don't know if that helped.
That's tremendous answer.
I mean, if
And
you're-
it's just, yeah, it just excites me all the more, and once in a while, I think we just need to highlight some of these wonderful things that are happening, so.
Well,
Thank you. That was a great description.
So the renovation of it is being funded by one of the grants that we have right now. We're also in partnership with Cal State LA, and in fact, they are developing a Fab Lab that will be modeled more or less after ours, and so there will also be a connection basically between PCC and Cal State LA, which will help in our students being able to move from here to there and already have experience in that. And so we're actually really excited about the fact that we believe that once this project is complete, that the Fab Lab at Pasadena City College will be a model maker space that will be looked at throughout the state. And there are a number of manufacturers of the equipment actually that will be donating some of the equipment for free, with the understanding that they then can show it off when they're trying to get others to buy their equipment. So we're quite excited about it.
Trustee Wong.
Yes, I also wanted to add that I think just a couple of months ago, we had an open house with the superintendents, and we went through the makerspace, which was very, very impressive. And so I really thank you, Dr. Giugni, for your invitation that we all asked for a tour, and I hope that when the Fab Lab gets its new equipment and gets some renovation, that we might have an open house and invite people from our community to also see this, because not only is it important for us as trustees and the superintendents to see this, I think that it's important for the community to also see what we're doing and how this is promoting the success of our students. And I also really appreciated that we formed a strong partnership with Cal State LA, which is an institution near and dear to my heart. Thank you.
And if I could add one other comment, in regard to interactions with the community, some of what's already happening is there is a community group called STEAM Coders that we are partnering with to do hackathons and other events there as well. So we will also be doing things that draw the community in, which we hope will increase the number of students that want to come here, but will also put PCC in a very good light in regard to supporting science, technology, engineering, art, and math in the PCC area.
Any further discussion or questions? We have a motion to approve. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 with one absence. The advisory vote, aye. Now we will go to what had been consent item F13, authorize award contract number B180091 for Armin Sarafian Building, U-Building Architectural Services. There a motion to approve?
Second.
There's been a motion to approve and second. Any discussion? Trustee Martin.
Well, first off, similar to the last item, every now and then, I think there's an item that needs to be pulled just to highlight it to the public. And if there was a item in this year that would count for that, I would think it's the selection of the architect for the new U building replacement. Obviously, that U building has been out of service for a number of years. This has been a big deal. The contract itself is $4 million, and $4 million is a big deal, but obviously this firm is going to be leading this project for many years to come on, and I don't remember how many millions of dollars the U building replacement is, but it's tremendously significant. So I think it's, first off, very appropriate that it not just be lost in a consent item. It needs to be brought out and highlighted. And so my questions that I'm about to ask are more similar to Fab Lab, out of my excitement that we're taking a monumentous step moving forward on this project, and not really in the context of any kind of disparaging thoughts towards the firm that we selected. In the last 10 to 20 years, I've had the opportunity in my personal work experience to be part of teams that have built gymnasiums and sports parks, and I realized probably the most significant decision we made in every decision of a million decisions was the selection of the architect. And I also realized that the selection of an architect, more than any other decision, is a little bit left brain, right brain, art and science coming together, and there's a little bit of even personality and how this firm can work as a team with the team from PCC, and in particular looking to Dr. Verdian and Dr. Storti and the rest of that team is going to be a tremendous responsibility on them in all the many things that come together. And so I had tried to send ahead a few questions to prepare you that I thought the public needed to hear, and I certainly am interested in hearing on why we selected this particular firm. It's good to know how many other kinds of buildings similar to ours they've done, what you found rose them to the top over the other representatives, of course, without naming any other names. And it would just be good to get a general reminder, at least for me, you know, the magnitude of the square footage and some of the parameters that we've asked these people to do, and some of the challenges of making sure that their final product isn't just a great health building, but it's a great building that's connected to the rest of the campus, and in a way that that also reflects out to the community and reflection of the rest of the community. So all of that is going to be front and center on this particular firm, and so I think it's appropriate for trustees to ask those big questions of you and let the public as well as the trustees hear the answers.
I will provide the first part of the answer to the first part of your question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Storti. In the selection of the architect, we had a shared governance committee at the college level comprised of faculty, staff, and management. An RFP went out, and we had close to 15 firms that responded to that. The committee screened the applicants and interviewed 12 groups?
8 firms.
8 firms, and interviewed 8 firms. Of the 8, 3 were recommended to be interviewed by myself and Dr. Storti. The first level committee did a wonderful job reviewing the kind of work that the firms have been doing statewide, nationwide, the type of organizations they have been working, the type of products that they have been erecting and putting in place, and felt that those 3 firms should be forwarded to be interviewed by the college president and the vice president. We met with the 3 firms. We had very lengthy conversations. We had a set of questions that were asked of every single firm. And we looked again at the work that they have done, very pointed, specific questions relating to design, to their ability to work with college faculty and staff. We looked at the number of community colleges for which they worked and the type of buildings that they worked. And in our opinion, based on everything that we had seen, based on the level of experience, the size of the firm, the availability of their staff to get to the college, to work with us, we felt that GKK Works was the team that would do the best job. What added also the little, if you want, the extra boost that they had was they very recently completed an exactly very similar building to ours at the Riverside City College that housed exactly the same programs that we have at the college. And they also showed us the variations of designs that they could do depending on the footprint that we have. At Riverside City College, they showed us 3 different designs that they could have used based on their footprint, but the college decided to go with one specific design. We also found out by questioning them as to how they proceed working with faculty and staff. The types of forums and meetings they hold before they even produce the first draft of what the building would look like. And when we look at that, and I have had some conversations with some of the people that would be in that building, and Dr. Story as well, and we felt that that was the firm that we needed. And on top of that, they're a local firm. They have an office right here in Pasadena. And we've looked at many of the buildings that they have designed up and down the state of California. And they also have they've designed buildings outside of California as well. And I will turn it over now to Dr. Storti, who will be answering more specific questions about the building and about the process and about what will be happening from now on.
If I may add to the qualifications of GKK, in addition to completing the Riverside City College Science and Nursing Building, they also completed a nursing building for the University of San Diego and Concordia Universities, very similar buildings. They've also completed 51 LEED certified projects. Sustainability is something that's very important to us here at PCC, so they have a number of their professionals are certified in performing LEED designs. They also have extensive experience working with community colleges and working with the Chancellor's Office. It's very important for this project because this project is a 100% state-funded project. It's a replacement project, so we're working with certain constraints as far as the design of the building. And we've already had a conference call with the Chancellor's Office with GKK Works to talk about, what is some of the flexibility we have with the design, because the way the project was presented to the state as a five-story building. But they wanted to know if we have flexibility, can we, instead of having a 5-story building, could we have a 4-story building, or perhaps 2 buildings right next to each other? So they're also already looking at options and working with the state. They have extensive experience with DSA, which is very important to get the plans through. And another area which is very important, being a 100% state-funded project, we're working with a finite budget. The budget's $60 million, $63 million with cost escalations, and we felt that GKK could deliver the product within that budget. And if they can't, then the college would have to come up with funds, which we don't have funds set aside for this project. So they have experience coming in budget on a number of projects, including Riverside, and that's something that impressed us.
I have a follow-up that,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
well,
Go ahead.
Did you have an opportunity to speak with anyone from Riverside or San Diego State Concordia that are living in the final product, or those that got to be part of the working process with them, and were you satisfied or impressed with their comments?
I did. I spoke with someone at Riverside, and they were very impressed with the building. I know Dr. Bell worked with GKK when he was at Chafee, and he speaks highly of the firm as well.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add that the president of Riverside City College, Dr. Abvolde Isaac, spoken very highly of the firm and of the way by which they have conducted themselves at Riverside City College.
Well, that's really comforting to hear all this, because especially the fact that they've done so many other very similar projects, because you can't be experienced, and every time they do one, they learn something new that benefits the next person, and so that's really good information.
The
I
Riverside
appreciate it.
project, it's actually a model match to ours. It's a larger building, but it's a model match. The programs that are in the building, the way it's situated, and they're very pleased with it.
That's
And that's something,
fantastic.
and it's not only a model match, but it's with a community college.
Yeah, no, that's just fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Trustee Wah.
Yes, when I saw this item, I really didn't have any questions. I was just like so thrilled that we were going to get this moving, and I'd been talking this up in my community that we were #1 on the bond list, and so they've all been waiting for this. But I do appreciate Trustee Martin's questions, because I do think it's important for us to know, we trust you, and I think it's, and now hearing your responses, I just think this is really, just also gives me a great deal of confidence that, we're going to move on this very quickly, and this will be the right firm for us, and we'll come in on budget. One of the things I did want to say is there's been a lot of discussion about building and planning in my communities. A lot of, I come from an old guard community, and then some new people coming in, so there's a lot of discussion on changes. And we had a really interesting architecture build design firm that came in, and they're doing a house just a half a block from me. And what they did was they held a community open house on that particular property. And what they did was they discussed the design and why they went with that design and how it's going to fit in with the rest of the environment. And so I hope at some point this would be a nice open house, much like the Fab Lab. We would have an open house, and we would have a chance to talk to the architects. And so it'd be a nice way to kind of open this up and see how things are going. So whenever you all feel it's the right time, I would encourage us to think about that.
Trustee Osterling.
Thank you. So a lot of this building is already dialed in the sense that it's a replacement, and so the building envelope or the massing is somewhat locked in already. And then the functions that are going to go on inside the building, the teaching functions, et cetera, are also pretty well identified. And what I would like to have you comment on is then the form. And what I'm getting at there is philosophically, some architects believe in institutional buildings in blending in or making a modern statement that pays homage, if you will, to the historic architecture on a campus. And the best example that I can think of here at PCC, the best example I can think of in any college campus, is the Shatford Library. It's just a modern, contemporary building, but the way it highlights and pulls out our traditional architecture, it's outstanding. And then also here in Pasadena, as we go west on California Avenue, there's I think it's called the Earth Sciences Building at Caltech, which is a complete departure from everything going on there. And design is very subjective. Some people like the first example I gave. Others like the second example, obviously, or that building wouldn't have been built. And so my question is, when you interviewed these firms, did you discuss those types of design philosophies? And what's the philosophy of this firm and the college for this particular building? And just one final comment, and then I'll let you respond, because in the same way that the library has been a great icon for PCC as it fronts Colorado Boulevard, very visible, this building is our eastern gateway, not quite as well-traveled a street, but it's still going to be a very visible gateway building. Thank you.
GKK Works is here not to impose their vision and their philosophy on us. They understand that Pasadena City College has a vision, has a philosophy, has an idea as to what this building will look like and how it is going to blend within our existing architectural design. And we have asked them that question, and they have shown us how they have worked with various college districts, colleges, universities, to ensure that the vision and the philosophy that the institution has will be honored, and the design will blend with what the college wants to see. And they've shown us how they have done that in several instances.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Well, what's comforting to me is the fact that this company is well-known throughout the state. And what's comforting to me is the fact that we went through the entire group, faculty, the committee. I think that is the essence, because at the end of the day, the trustees go home. But the faculty and the staff that's here at PCC will be the one that will be continuously interacting with these people. And yeah, we ask the hard questions, and that's good because we're supposed to ask these questions. But at the end of the day, I'm confident that the committee and Dr. Verdeen and our VP pretty much stir this up real good, and we should be pretty comfortable and waiting to see them come and give us a presentation, which I'm sure they will, of what they're going to do. And there is a process, right? There is a process where, because I remember we had, this was for the Center of Arts. We had those periodic things. So I'm very excited and anxious to see this move forward.
Trustee Osterling.
Just one quick follow-up. We covered this in our questions from the trustees and the superintendent's response, but I wanted to get it onto the public record. Dr. Verdeen, I'm pleased to hear that the funds have been authorized by the state to issue the bonds, and we're awarding this contract, and so ultimately this contract will be paid by the state and specifically from the bond measure that was passed.
Yes, yes, including also, which we have not mentioned, the demolition of the existing building also will be covered by the state.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of comments. Mr. Petito from GKK Works, yes. Thank you for coming. We didn't put you through the whole dog and pony show routine here. I'm quite confident that you and I are the only people in this room that have a degree in architecture. I took a different route somewhat as soon as they handed me the diploma. So I am a recovering architect. I never got licensed. I've been around Pasadena for a long, long time, and you've got an office here. You guys must know what it's like to do projects in Pasadena. We are not the city of Pasadena, and we are much more reasonable. So I don't, if you have any trepidation about what it might be like to do another project here in Pasadena, if you've already done them, we will be much more reasonable. So. Excellent, and thank you for coming. If there are no further comments, have a vote. All in favor?
Oh, we didn't.
Excuse me? We have a motion. Passes, trustee Paul?
Tony, do you,
I
he's
already
look, he did it,
Oh,
but
okay. Passes 6-0 with the one absent and the student trustee voting in favor. Thank you. Okay, action items. Approve the unclassified salary schedule.
I will ask Dr. Norman to briefly introduce this item.
Sure. Yes, this particular item is an item that really has just been modified. The board has previously approved the schedule, but what we're undertaking at Pasadena right now is we are making some changes to our short-term employee or unclassified temporary assignments. We're moving from college assistants to a variety of different short-term temporary assignments, all of which are allowable under the Education Code. It includes positions such as professional experts. It also includes apprentices, interns, seasonal short-term employees. So what we're doing is we are revising how we employ our short-term employees, but we have not changed the schedule in terms of the rates that have been previously approved. We've just simply modified the schedule by listing where those various positions would fall on the schedule. So that's the change that we're presenting tonight.
Do I hear a motion?
Move approval?
I have a question.
Yes.
Excuse me. Have we had to make material changes or adjustments recently as a result of minimum wage or
Yes.
that sort of legislation? Now, is that something that we had to do in order to produce this schedule, or was it done previously?
This schedule actually was updated prior to the new year because we had to increase the minimum wage up to $10.50. So we've done that, but this will continue in the next few years. We will bring it back again because we have to make another adjustment for the new year, which will be $11 for the minimum wage.
Yeah, people sometimes talk about living wage, but living wages aren't in any way statutory. It's a separate thing. And
Yes.
Okay, right. We're just complying with the law. Thank you.
Yes.
All in favor? Okay, this passes 6-0 with one absent and the student trustee voting in favor. Thank you. Adopt Resolution 573, approve GAN appropriation limits for 2017-18. Dr. Verdian, do you want to?
We ask the board to approve this because under the provision of government code, the board has to set appropriation limits for the subsequent fiscal year, and we're asking that the board approve this.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? Vote, please. This passes 6-0 with one absent student trustee voting in favor. Thank you. Approve tentative agreements between Pasadena Area Community College District and the Police Officers Association.
Dr. Norman, would you like to introduce the item?
This item represents negotiations based on our Sunshine proposal to open our contract. We opened the contract with POA in March of this year. We were able to finalize negotiations a few weeks ago, and of course prepared it after they ratified the agreement with their unit. So they have ratified this 2-year contract. It goes to 2019. At that point, we will be looking at reopening the contract. It also includes an item relative to compensation and benefits. It addresses benefits to the extent of what we are going to be offering this year. It is a 2-year agreement in terms of compensation and benefits, and again, POA has ratified unanimously the agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Passes 6-0 with one absent and student trustee voting in favor. Thank you. Adoption of Education Protection Account Funding and Expenditures.
Dr. Story, would you like to introduce this item?
Absolutely. As part of Proposition 30, which provided funding for community colleges, it required this annual board item which states where the funds are being used that came from Prop 30. And this just delegates that those funds are being used for educational purposes. It's a standard board item approved each year.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Passes 6-0 with one absent and student trustee voting in favor. Information items. We've already had the presentation from the foundation. I just have some information and to pass concerning the presidential search. The board has a bylaw 2431, a copy of which is part of the agenda package for the benefit of the board and the trusts and the public. Also in the board package was a schedule. It was a proposed schedule prepared by our consultant Ralph Anderson and Associates back in September, October 2014 when we did the previous search. That was included just to give people an idea of, and for those who were on the board who were here then, how the process unfolded and kind of a timeline. This is not a timeline for this cycle, but rather just sort of background information. And then there's also a document which was published by the Aspen Institute, Hiring Exceptional Community College Presidents. This document and another one or two documents were presented at a convention of the California, the Community College League of California at one of their conventions a couple of years ago. And it was presented by somebody from the Aspen Institute whose name I don't recall. I don't remember, but also helping him do the presentation was Dr. Doug Houston, who's Chancellor of the Yuba Community College District. He'd also done a retreat session for us about a year and a half ago or so. But in any case, I just included that as some background reading material, and it's available for the public in the agenda package. I'd like to draw people's attention to a couple of provisions of the bylaw 2431. The bylaw describes several procedures for selecting a president, and one of them, which we will certainly be implementing, is the creation of a screening committee to take a look at the applicants that are received for the position. And this screening committee, as specified in the bylaw, would include one representative appointed by each of the trustees, two representatives from the Academic Senate, Classified Senate, two representatives, Management Association would have a representative, Executive Committee would have a representative, and the student trustee would be a member of this screening committee, and the executive and the Associated Students representative, whoever the Associated Students feels should be representative on that committee. The duties of that committee would be to screen the applicants, take a look at all the applicants, and with the assistance of whoever we hire as a search firm, to narrow it down to a set of, shall we say, semifinalists. Last time we had 6 semifinalists that were presented to the board. The board interviewed each one of them. We narrowed it down to 3 finalists and then selected Dr. Verdian. That is something which, if we stick to approximately the schedule that was followed last time, is something that would occur after the first of the year. The screening committee met during the month of February, and things unfolded after that. the board bylaws specify all discussions and actions of the Board of Trustees regarding the proposed process to be used in selecting the superintendent president shall occur in an open meeting of the board. When we discuss how we're going to do this and the schedule and that kind of thing, it needs to be an open session. Anytime we're talking about specific individuals, it's a personnel type of matter, and that is appropriately done in a closed session. But one of the key things will be a discussion of what the job description would be. Every time a college goes out for a search like this, they always take a look at the job description very carefully. Last time around, that was done in the month of October, the month immediately following the hiring of a search firm. And that also took place after the search firm had conducted a public forum. And I would emphasize this time, I think the last time we did this, I think that occurred on a Friday, but I think there's probably a better day of the week to have that, so that we have, make sure we maximize participation. And that's feedback that the board will use prior to it making its decision and finalizing the job description and what people and what we want to emphasize that we are looking for. There's also a appointment of an ad hoc committee. Board president will appoint an ad hoc committee for members for the purpose of coordinating the logistics and the procedures of the search. And we've had this each time. Last time around, Trustee Fellow was president, and he designated himself, Vice President at the time Brown, and Clerk Wah to be members of that ad hoc committee. I will be designating myself, Trustee Fellow, and Trustee Osterling, President, Vice President, and Clerk. Trustee Fellow has informed me that he's got some travel during the month of October, and if there's any need for this ad hoc committee to do anything, it's not an ad hoc committee that keeps meeting and all this, it's rather sort of a standby in case there's a need for some coordination that doesn't require calling a full meeting of the Board of Trustees. I will ask immediate past President Wah to step in his stead if she will agree to that. That's pretty much the outline of how the board bylaws call for us to undertake this process, and gives you an idea of and some materials for those of you who were here last time to refresh your memory on how we did this. And exactly how we do it will be decided after we move ahead. I expect that the ad hoc committee will probably make a recommendation for the September meeting on the procedure to move ahead and interview or solicit proposals from the various search firms that are out there. So that's my information. Comments, if there's any questions that any of the trustees have, I'd be happy to. Trustee Wah.
Yeah, so I was a little surprised to see this item, but hearing, I think that it's kind of good to review history, and we really only have two trustees who have not been through this, Trustees Osterling and Hilsman. But one of the things I thought it might be a little premature, and I think it's important that we not give a perception that this is that this is cast in stone, that there needs to be some flexibility. The procedure may change. I think that is up to us as an entire board to discuss how we move forward. And I think it's highly dependent also on who we pick as the search firm. But number one, I believe that we agreed to accept Dr. Rudian's recommendation. We asked for a recommendation for a facilitator to come in and talk about how we as a board work together, and then how we work together with the superintendent. And I think that the relationship issue is sort of the crux of what we do and how we are selecting the next superintendent, and then how we all agree we behave, what are the norms that we will abide by to make this a good, strong working relationship. And I appreciate that Dr. Verdian has also agreed to be a participant to help us in not only, agreeing to work with us in a facilitator so that we can to find this stronger relationship, but also helping us also with the search firm. So I really appreciate Dr. Verdian's graciousness in that. But I just wanted to make sure that as the public hears this information, that they don't see that this is necessarily, this may follow a similar pattern, but there may be deviations, and this needs to be decided as a board, by the board as a whole.
Thank you. Excuse me, Trustee Brown.
Yes, I would like to echo exactly what Trustee Waugh said. It is imperative that we begin to work as a board. The decisions the decisions that we are making or will be making, the process, the selection of the search firm and all this is something that we sit down and we work out together. And the guidelines or the process or whatever we would like to call it, we want to do that as a board. And yes, and let's remember the most important thing was what Trustee Waugh said, that we have to figure a way how we're going to be doing the communication and, of course, appreciating and using the expertise of our president, which is going to be with us a year. So let's just think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other observations or comments? Thank you. The superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. I just want to start by saying that the semester will begin in 10 days from now, on Monday the 28th. As of this morning, our enrollment of credit and non-credit unduplicated headcount is 27,120 students, and that's about 89% capacity. And we do believe, based on what we are seeing happening, that this will go up to probably 94, 95 by the Friday prior to the start of the first day of school. You heard the presentation from the foundation board. As of yesterday, we had 105 students who will be benefiting from the Pasadena College Promise. And we are very proud to say that they come from 16 public and private high schools. And it does appear that Arcadia High School, where we will be holding our September 20th board meeting, has the greatest number of students who will be on that promise. The next thing that we want to tell you is that when we looked at the 105, we find that we have 50% male and 49% female. And 88% of the students who are on the promise plan on transferring to a four-year institution. As you know, we are currently in the 4th week of the Pathways program, and I have to say that over the past 2 years, we have increased that number, the participation number, 400 times. Is that 400 times or fourfold?
Fourfold.
Fourfold. We have now 3,169 students in the Pathways program. And 2 years ago, we had, 700 or so?
Oh, 1,000.
About 1,000. So we are very proud to say that we've done a wonderful job at that. And the other thing that we are doing also with the help of Dr. Olivo and Dean Armando is that we are also approaching those students who have not identified themselves as wanting to be part of any cohort. We are going after them. We want to mentor them, support them, and get them everything that they need to be successful so that they can transfer. As you know, for the 2nd year, we have transformed the Harbison Hall into a welcome center where students can do some kind of a one-stop shopping. They come here, they get everything. They get advised, they get counseled, they get to pick their classes, they get their ID, and it's wonderful. And I am working right now with Dr. Olivo to see what we can do in the L building to make that L building transformed into some kind of a one-stop center where students keep going around as they come in that building and get all the services that they need. As of this morning, we have served 3,366 students in the Harbison Center. And we are proud to say that the number is significantly greater than what we had last year. Last week, several of our students in 4 different teams participated in the Formula E racing at the Art Center. And I got to be a judge for the 3rd time, and I must say that our students did very well. One of our teams won first prize, and there were international teams from China, Japan, Southeast Asia, the 4-year colleges and universities, and Mexico, yes, and we did very, very well. And we need to thank Sandy Lee for taking our students there, and we'll also, and Trustee Wa, you would be delighted to hear that one of our teams included high school students.
Yay!
They came from Temple City, and we were able to include them through a special program that we have in our teams. Next week, on Friday, we will host our new Student Success Day and an open house in the morning. And at 12 o'clock, we are going to have a luncheon for all faculty and staff. And at 12:45, we will gather in the Saxon Auditorium for our convocation, which will include representatives from the Senate, right, and the students, faculty, and management. And after that, there will be, and of course, Trustee Ross Selvage will also be giving a welcome at that time. And then after that, there will be since it is a professional development day, that will be immediately followed by a presentation by Dr. Pam Cox-Otto on generational gap, diversity, culture gap, and gender issues, I believe. So that will be a presentation that will take place after that. I will be going to Hawaii next week, not on vacation, but as part of the military has invited college presidents and will be taking a team of 21 community college presidents and administrators and faculty to Hawaii to review the educational facilities of the military in Hawaii. And at the same time, there will be a college fair that we will participate in. And this concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Verdi. We will now move to announcements by shared governance representatives, beginning with the Associated Students.
Hello and good evening, everyone. At the moment, Associated Students, we are in preparation for Welcome Week as well as New Student Success Day, and also Club Rush as well, which will be from Tuesday, September 12th to Thursday, September 14th. So this year we're changing a few things. So instead of calling it Club Week, we're just calling it Club Rush to promote more of kind of like a university campus feel. And then also we are having 2 sessions. So the first part will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then also 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. so we can make sure we are involving all the night students as well. Yeah, thank you.
Classified Senate.
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of Audrey Joseph, who could not be with us tonight. The Senate is very busy. The new executive officers have only been in office for about 3 weeks now. But as of today, they voted and approved the appointment of 2 new senators. The appointments are permitted as per the Senate bylaws. And the new senators are Yahaira de la Paz from the Career Center and Miranda Castaneda from the CEC. So we're also representing other than the main campus. The Senate also voted and approved some bylaw changes which further clarify language regarding processes and procedures. Additionally, Denise Albright was appointed as Professional Development Coordinator, and in this capacity, she will facilitate the process and coordinate paperwork for all professional development opportunities for classified staff. Felicia Mitchell, who last year served as the Board of Trustees rep, she's working with the team to produce an upcoming newsletter that should be coming out maybe in about 3 weeks. And one of the newest developments is that the Senate has been invited to be involved in the welcoming of new faculty at the new faculty orientation. And they're very excited about that. As well as they've been invited to, the executive team has been invited to attend the Academic Senate retreat, and they're planning to attend that. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Now for what I think will probably be a visually artistic management association report.
Oh, but I want to thank the members of the board for making the observations about how these new buildings are to be designed and laid out. I appreciated the aesthetical dimension of that, to be sure. On July 23rd, the Management Association concluded its annual summer retreat at the University Club of Pasadena. The focus of the event was a working session dedicated to a long overdue and ongoing revision of the manager's handbook. We thank the 35-plus managers who enthusiastically participated in this event, particularly because it comes at the high vacation time. And also, starting on August 28th with the opening of school, the managers will once again be making themselves available for our successful weekend evening managers coverage. And again, this is something that we encourage all managers to participate in, and we have a, generally speaking, an ungrumbling participation by most of them, at least. Thank you.
That's good. Ungrumbling. That's good.
Thank you. Next item is proposed future board business meeting dates.
The trustees report. The trustees
Oh.
report.
Oh, excuse me, the student trustee.
Good evening, everyone. Students are getting ready for the upcoming fall semester, which begins on August 28th. Pathways has also organized JAM orientation for new students, and that ends next Friday on the 25th. And next Friday is also New Student Success Day. Essentially, students come to get familiarized with the campus. Thank you.
I was going to have you do your report along with all the rest of the trustees, but okay. Proposed future board business meeting dates.
Rest of the board.
Oh, and Board of Trustees. Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading it on the next slide down. Right.
Are you in a hurry to get out of here,
Trustee Brown.
President Selvage?
Somebody put Trustee Fellow.
Yes, I always like to thank people who do some extraordinary things. I wanted to thank Dr. Cynthia Olivo. I had a student in my district who had some challenges and was accepted to San Francisco State University, and thank you. She's on her way there, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Trustee Osterling.
So right here in Creveling, we had our LACSTA meeting, Los Angeles County School Trustees Association, and to my pleasant surprise, almost all of my fellow trustees actually took advantage of the local venue and came and joined in the meeting. So thank you for your support, fellow trustees. Our featured speaker was our new LA County Supervisor, Catherine Barger. And knowing that she was going to be our speaker, I had a hidden agenda, or a not-so-hidden agenda. And that's why I invited our Associated Students President, Kylie Lamb. Our elected officials do not like to hear from us about student issues. They like to hear from students. And Kylie gave a presentation about the transit pass, and our county supervisor happens to sit on the Metro Transit Board, and she was not aware of some of the information that Kylie presented, and she is going to take a good hard look at restoring the transit passes back to the way they used to be before they were severely cut back. So Kylie, there is a future for you in lobbying elected officials should you go down that route. Thank you for coming and doing that presentation.
Thank you for having me. I'm ready.
Trustee Martin.
Yes, in downtown LA is a very prestigious foundation called the California Community Foundation. It serves multi-purposes, one of which is it invests funds for donors who want to have a particular cause and make sure that their cause moves forward. They were also instrumental, the California Community Foundation, instrumental in supporting the city of El Monte, and in particular the El Monte Promise to help El Monte residents go to college. And I bring this up about CCF because in their most recent quarterly, they have a spiel about scholarships and how they're funding. And in there is a very nice picture where they have 3 students holding up the banners of 3 local 4-year institutions. But to the careful eye, this picture was taken standing right out here at Pasadena City College. And I'm sure it's because of our architecture, now that that's on the table. So if you want to know where I am on his question on architecture. So anyway, I just thought I couldn't pass up the opportunity as we're talking about architecture to point out they may be promoting some other 4 years, but where they want to do it, of course, is right here. And which also brings to mind that sometime in the last month or so, my wife and I were watching some movie on Netflix about some college student, and of course, it was all filmed right here at Pasadena City College, and they had carefully changed the name to something else. But anyway, it's obviously a very important thing we're doing, and I just enjoy pointing out little subtleties where they come up.
Trustee Wah.
Well, I missed Dr. Verdian's forum, but I heard it was very successful. Instead, I attended the PTSA lunch, and I had a chance to hear about the food pantry from Dr. Olivo and also from her staff, Lisa, who is the new director of the food pantry. And I understand that we are serving 200 students, at least 200 students per week, and we hope to move that up to 500 students. And the PTSA, with their funds, bought a commercial-sized refrigerator so that they could increase the storage for fresh food to give out. So it's been really successful. Thank you for your leadership in that. The community was so appreciative of being able to hear this, and I encourage the college to put out more information to the community. I know our Rotary clubs, Trustee Osterling and I are both Rotarians, and our Rotary clubs have been waiting to hear how we can be helpful to you in this, because the students and their welfare are very important to us, and it's a great way for us to build that partnership. I also wanted to thank you all for the Welcome Center. I've heard great compliments from students in my area, and it does sound and it feels to me more like a 4-year college kind of an outreach. So thank you all, to the faculty and to the students, for making that happen. And I want to congratulate Trustee Osterling on his first LACSA meeting, and I would like to ask that we adjourn this meeting in memory of Joe Probst. That was an announcement made at the LACSA meeting. Joe passed away last month, and I forgot to add this at our last meeting. But Joe was also a 35-year professor here at PCC. He was a professor emeritus, and he was a speech and debate coach, and he was the speech coach for the Tournament of Roses Queen and Court. So I think it would be, hopefully, that we will all agree to do that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and I think, Trustee Action, you may have been approached by Pasadena Unified that they have a resolution on LGBTQ, and they asked us to take a look at that resolution. So I wait for the students to forward that to us. I think they feel it was something really important that they have in their community, and asked us to take a look at that. And that's it, I think.
Thank you. I have just two points to make. One is I was also up there at Art Center for the Formula E races, and I'm glad I am not competing with the students who are up there. It's absolutely remarkable, and I find the various little engineering features and refinements and all this that they come up with to try and improve on previous years' designs and all that, just to be remarkable. And particularly those two high school students who proudly announced that they were high school students. And they didn't make it into the finals, but if they come here, they will after they graduate. And one other thing, I was at the President's Forum today, and one point that he mentioned about the Pasadena Promise is that apparently we are now able, or we're going to very soon be able, to actually identify students who would qualify who may not know that they qualify. And I mention this because I think it's a great idea, and also because I've talked about this program with some people, and I point out that there isn't a means test. And some people have told me, well, they won't apply. It's not enough money. Well, you know, we're going to basically tell you that it's there and encourage you to step up and take advantage. So I think that's great.
We are doing it. We are identifying them, right, Dr. Olivo? We are identifying them.
Yes, students do not need to apply. If they've applied to the college already, we run a nightly job that identifies the students without them even having to check.
When do they find out they're getting the promise?
There is a communication that is sent from our very own staff member, Javier Carvajal Ramos, and he's been sending that notification to the students.
So I don't know how the registration process works exactly these days, or at what point somebody says, hey, write a check if you don't have, you know, any of these other scholarships. But so as you're going through the process, at some point before you would have to write a check, they're notified you don't have to.
Correct.
Okay, good, thank you. Proposed future board business meeting dates. Dr. Verdian?
The next meeting is on September the 6th, right here. And then on September 20th, we will be in Arcadia. I know that Ms. Thompson is working on setting up a date for a board retreat in September or early October, a date that is convenient for everybody.
Thank you. Proposed future agenda items. Do any trustees have any proposed future agenda items that have not yet been brought to our attention? Trustee Wah.
So, although the strategic plan is already listed on the future agenda items, I'm the only trustee who actually has recommended that we have that. So I would like to make sure that this, and I know Dr. Verdian, even though if it's only one trustee who makes the recommendation, Dr. Verdian has been very good about trying to move that up and get a date. So I think that this is a really good time for us as we move forward with a retreat date, that we move that strategic plan up and towards that, and maybe we discuss that. So I hope that is one of our goals.
We will do that.
Thank you. And then the other...
We're talking about what time frame? Approximately.
Let me check with staff on Monday morning, and I can give you that information at the next board meeting as to how, because I need to find out how much time it will take so that we can give you a time frame at that point as to when we will present it to you.
Thank you very much. And the other item, so the board policies subcommittee met today, and we talked about the upcoming drone policy, and then how that relates to data security, and this also relates to the whole technology plan. So that was also a request I had made, and so I think I'm listed as the only board member, but if we could move that, if the other board members agree, if we move that to having a date, and I know you're moving towards a plan, so if we have a date.
We did present the technology plan, but what we're going to do is we're going to take that technology plan and put it together with a business continuity at the college. We'll put the two together and do our best to have a presentation to the board. I know Mr. Cameron is here, hopefully the very beginning of February. Would that be an okay time to have the technology and the business continuity plan?
I think that would be great, and so let me just add, I think that the technology presentation we had talked about the goals, but we never really saw the plan, and I think we had discussed the board never saw the plan, so it would be great if we had a chance to really see it in detail and to be able to discuss it, especially with the data security issues that have been hitting various organizations, including the colleges. I think that would be important. The other request I had made, and I know, I think Dr. Sturdy, you've been working on this, was the transit information. So I know we hired a transit consultant, and we're going to have a presentation on that information.
Dr. Sturdy, I think you received a preliminary report, and the final report will be received.
Yeah, we received a draft, and we asked the consultant to look at some specific areas in addition to what was in the draft, and we expect to have the final report within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you very much for that update.
You can add me to the trustees on the list for the technology plan.
Thank you. Now we have a closed session item, Government Code Section 54957, evaluation of employee, superintendent, president, trustee. Osterling, are there any public comments on this closed agenda item?
No public comments.
Okay, thank you. We will adjourn to closed session. Thank you.